Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hello, I'm Eric.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, the podcast where we take a long, hard look at some of our favorite action movies from the era of Arnold.
Nice. Schwarzenegger is the icon of the genre, and we're taking a deep dive into some of these 80s and 90s cult action movies and breaking them all the way down.
Kevin, we're back.
We are back.
You always do the Arnold. I always hate being the one who has to say Arnold because you do it way better than me.
I just go for it.
And I just embarrass
myself. I let
myself.
the bourbon do the talking. I got myself another little Maker's Mark Old Fashioned going now.
Love it. I love it.
So we'll see if I make it to the finish line.
I've run through all of my high noon at this point. There's like a stack of cans behind me. So we're doing well. We're getting there. We're doing there.
But yeah, we're back on our last Boy Scout shit. Tony Scott. We were just talking off mic about how prolific of a guy Tony Scott was, considering he's kind of like a Nepo baby. I feel like.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
He's really Scott's brother.
Oh my God! I literally had no idea
didn't know that?
until you just said that.
I feel like Ridley Scott sort of put him on.
Wow.
Ridley Scott, he made it big, and I think he had Tony Scott directing like commercials and shit. And then he's like,
crazy.
Yeah, but you look at it and you're like, you do kind of have the same eye as Ridley, except more of like you're willing to do shittier, pulpier movies.
But I'll be honest, pulpier is what I like. I mean, if I'm just doing a quick back of the napkin math, I think I like more Tony Scott movies than I do Ridley Scott movies.
Dude. It doesn't really get better than Crimson Tide, to be honest.
That movie is
like Denzel and Gene Hackman.
Oh my God! And again, just like the tension between those two.
Yeah, awesome shit. Top Gun. Yeah, awesome.
We were just talking. I had forgotten that he directed The Fan, a highly underrated movie in my opinion.
He was like a hella good director. Like his movies are like his box office numbers. If you add up the gross of all his movies, has to be pretty good.
Oh yeah,
Enemy of the State, fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
Unstoppable, as I was saying, the train movie with Denzel and Chris Pine, awesome. Yeah, he's just he was a good ass fucking director.
It's a shame
out there doing work, making blockbusters.
Maybe that's the reason, because like I had
Man on Fire, solid.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rest in peace, Tony Scott.
Tony Scott.
We love you. Yeah.
Anyway.
I will try to bring us up to date on the plot.
Yeah,
this is fucked up.
We're getting close.
I'm going to be quick with it.
Just be quick with it.
So we've got the character of Joe Hallenbeck and Jimmy Dix. They are these unlikely partners thrust together because Joe is a private detective who got hired by a woman named Corey to protect her from some miscellaneous bad guys that she felt in danger of. She got killed by those guys. Now, Jimmy was her boyfriend and a former football player. So they're both sort of working together to sort of solve the case now. They're sort of starting to actually bond and like each other a little bit. They've shared their stories, their tragic stories of loss. Joe used to be a Secret Service agent, saved the president's life one time, then got fired from the Secret Service, and now he's sort of like a burned out private eye. And Jimmy used to be a hotshot football player. He got kicked out of the league because he got hooked on drugs, and he wound up like gambling on football apparently. But yeah, they're working together to solve the case. Joe brought Jimmy back to his house. Jimmy met the family. Jimmy tried to snort some cocaine in Joe's bathroom, and Joe's like, "Get the fuck out of my house." And so now they've had a little bit of a falling out, but we sort of reckon they'll come back together again. It's like boy meets boy loses boy.
Boy gets boy back.
Yeah, of course.
Boy gets boy back.
So that's where we're at. Dude, so you gave the in-depth recap last time. I feel like I gave this really short recap, but I think I nailed it.
You nailed it.
It might be the bourbon talking.
I have no notes for you. No notes on that. Yeah.
Right on.
You got us where we needed to get. Everybody is going to be wrapped up. It's like, oh, yeah. Okay, that was important. I remember that. That was great. Yeah, 100%.
Sweet. And take it away, Eric.
All right, part 4. Here we go. So we had the falling out. Jimmy signs Joe's daughter's card, a football card of Jimmy, reveals all the nonsense. So it's the next day, and Jimmy is getting out of his car and is immediately set upon by 3 goons who punch him and toss him over an overpass. This happened so fast, too.
It was
just like, whoa, what just happened?
First, we have to say he was like up early in the morning and driving out to buy a newspaper.
Right.
He was like pulling over to pump quarters into a machine to buy a newspaper. That's already insane.
Dude.
They could deliver those to your house.
I mean, I guess Jimmy
He wanted a newspaper for some reason.
I don't know. I guess he was just, maybe he was going to like get the newspaper and go get a cup of coffee, or I don't know. Like it was one stop of many. I don't know.
But those dudes, like in broad daylight, roughed him up in front of
threw him over
LA traffic, like chucked him off the overpass.
I mean,
shit was crazy.
This was before the days of security cameras everywhere. So maybe like if they're just counting on eyewitnesses to provide a description, it's not going to be a thing.
I assume that was meant to kill him, right?
Yeah, they were trying to kill him.
Somehow he survived.
I mean, that was maybe the most that pulled me out of the movie more than basically any other scene.
Yeah.
Was him bouncing off the hood of a car at the bottom of an overpass, and he gets up and he's apparently fine. And not only that, he does like a few jokes to some of the bystanders around him.
He did the Super Dave joke.
Yeah, he did the Super Dave joke, which just blew me away.
That bit to me,
R.I.P. Marty Funkhauser, right?
Yeah. That bit to me felt a little bit like he was doing like Axel Foley like shtick.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like I do feel like he came up, Damon came up idolizing Eddie Murphy, got his start in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was just like it's okay, people, it's okay. Like just bullshitting to the onlookers, you know?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you about that. And again, all of these action movies do have tropes that they fall back onto. And it's one of the reasons why we love them so much. But so he survives. And we cut to the police station, and the lieutenant underling is coming into his office, and he tells his boss about what happened to Jimmy. And he also tells him that he heard from Joe's neighbor the day that Mike was killed, that Mike's car had been in front of Joe's house the whole night.
Mike was like the guy who threw Joe that bit of work.
Yeah.
And also the dude who was fucking Joe's wife.
Right, exactly.
And Joe figured out, I guess, he was trying to get me killed by putting me on this dangerous case.
Yep.
So that he could have my wife, I guess.
Which is just
take my wife, please. Like he doesn't love his wife.
No, I know.
He's like, you're gonna also have to deal with my shithead daughter.
Oh my God. Seems like an overreaction on Mike's part. Like, I know how I'm gonna steal Joe's wife. I'll just have him killed.
Yeah, some friend.
But anyway, the lieutenant deduces that Mike was in fact fucking Sarah correctly. He assumes this correctly. And then, unfortunately, though, uses faulty logic to jump to the conclusion that clearly Joe is the one who killed Mike.
Right.
In literally the most over-the-top, ostentatious way possible.
Yeah.
Anyway,
why are they just now getting around to getting a statement from the neighbor?
I don't know. This seems like this is something
like
that should have
days later.
happened.
It's like you should have got it on the scene on the day.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean,
the
it's
plot
LA
is
Cops. What do you expect? Yeah.
That's where I was like, I guess Joe didn't tell him.
Yeah.
Because it was maybe embarrassing, but also maybe he's like, well, if I tell him this dude I caught him fucking my wife,
at least
then they're
going to
think that I'd be like prime suspect.
I'd
right?
like to believe that the cops aren't so incompetent that it's just like, okay, yeah, this guy was having an affair, but blowing up his car with C4 seems like an overreaction.
In front of my own home?
In front of my own house seems like that's not the wisest thing. But anyway, so the lieutenant's underling says, I'll go grab Joe and we'll bring him in for questioning.
I don't think they would ever send like one man to go bring in a suspected murderer.
No, there's no way. They would send like
several cops.
Yeah, at least a couple black and whites plus the lieutenant. I mean, it just... This is always sort of a Hollywood thing too, where it's just like in a real world you're going to send a team of people, but in movies you just send the one dude.
I'll go bring him in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at Joe's house, Joe's watching Sarah sleep, And then he walks into Darian's room and watches her sleep too. It's a nice little moment, if a little creepy. I always find it creepy when people like stand over their loved ones watching them sleep.
Tucking them in.
I have watched my loved ones sleep. That's also because I'm laying in bed next to them, right? Not like looming over them.
It was also gross when he like went to like caress Darian's hair or some shit, and she like let out this inappropriately like sexual moan,
right.
like about the boy, like Tommy,
or
whatever it was. It's like,
what was that about?
Yeah, that was creepy.
Anyway, there's a ring at the doorbell, and when he opens it, we finally see Milo. Finally, and Milo immediately grabs a cattle prod and stuns Joe right in the chest with it, and he's out. He's out like a light.
Milo was the guy who we heard his voice earlier. He put the football player Billy Cole up to like killing himself, essentially in in the open of the movie. He's sort of this like strangely effeminate character,
very thin,
which is the way it was written. Like I found the screenplay like Shane Black's original draft.
And you said it was like 170 pages.
It was like it would have been a 3-hour movie. But it described Milo as being tall and thin and strangely effeminate with high cheekbones. And I'm like, well, they cast the shit out of this.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're getting.
Well, is this a time to talk about like the entire subplot of Milo that was cut from the movie, or should we say that for later?
I mean, we can mention it. Yeah, it was like in the super long screenplay, this character of Milo had a lot more screen time in which he had this side hustle going as a snuff film director.
Which is wow.
And there was like a whole lot of shit going on about like him having like girls cut up with chainsaws and later on in the flick in the end, something that doesn't happen at all in this movie, but they got Joe's wife.
Yeah.
And they were going to kill her. And then she ends up being the one who kills Milo.
Yeah.
None of that made it to. I'm not sure that it really muddies the water.
Yeah.
I'm like, we got to keep the story.
We got to keep this tight.
No one wants to watch a 3-hour. We don't want to watch John Wick 4. Like that shit was just too long.
I like John Wick 4, but yes, it was long.
It's
yes,
like, dude, we just don't need
long.
it. This is long. This is a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, at least with John Wick, there's no plot. It is just basically a series of action montage. Yeah.
But anyway, that's Milo. He's a not a lot of screen time. He's somewhat memorable.
Yeah, I mean, he's a memorable look. I mean, memorable enough that it's like I've seen you in other things. It's
memorable to me in that he plays it so like effeminately. Yeah. He's not like a big guy who's gonna fight you and kick your ass.
But he's still unbelievably menacing, right? I mean, like you don't doubt that this guy is like, okay, he's murdered some folks.
It was different. It's like outside the mold, what we're used to seeing. Yeah. So I liked it.
So another pair of goons pick up Joe's unconscious body and drags him outside to a car parked in front of the house. As they prepare to leave, the police underling shows up. Milo instructs one of his goons to give Milo Joe's pistol. And the underling walks up and asks the bad guys, hey, what's going on? What's the issue? And Milo goes, yes, officer. As a matter of fact, there is. Apparently, there are too many bullets in this gun, and then kills the underling.
That's a tough line to pull off.
I know, but
it's very wordy.
Yeah, it's very wordy. I mean, I almost had trouble getting that out right now, but I am also high on high noon.
There was another like direct headshot.
I know.
This is like gruesome.
We're doing counts. This is 4 or 5
I feel like they
on
cut
the movie.
I feel like this one. I feel like they cut it down because it was too gruesome. Like it seemed like it was cut short. Because we talked about it being an NC-17.
Yeah, the original cut was NC-17. So yeah, it was violent. Anyway, so Milo tells one of the other goons like, "Hey, make sure you get Joe's prints on the gun." And then he tosses the gun out of the window and is like, "Oop, looks like Joe just killed a cop." So
I want to talk about a thing real quick.
Yeah.
How smart or well informed do you think that Milo and the bad guys are about Joe? Because when we were watching, you noticed, oh, Joe's a lefty.
Yeah.
And when they were taking his fingerprints to put on the gun, they used his left hand.
Oh,
and I was like, so you knew he was lefty?
Yeah.
That'd be hard to know.
That is interesting. And I wonder if that's just a happy accident.
I don't know.
But that's a good point.
I loved that though.
I mean, that would be great. I mean, as a lefty, and he holds the gun with his left. I mean, like that's
because
double
if you're like,
incriminating.
oh, we got your fingerprints, and it's like, yeah, but that's from my right hand. I don't shoot with my right
yeah,
hand.
exactly.
I loved all that.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
pretty
but
cool.
is Milo that like on top of his shit? I know this guy's a lefty.
It makes him a more menacing villain if they've done that level of research.
I'm into it.
Yeah. So as Joe comes to after he's been knocked unconscious, we get another flashback of the time that he saves fake Jimmy Carter's life.
Fake Jimmy Carter. Absolutely, though. This dude just looked like Jimmy Carter, but he wasn't Jimmy Carter.
No, he looked just different enough from Jimmy Carter that you notice it.
But we know who it's supposed to be.
We know who
this
it's
ain't
supposed
Reagan.
to be. Yeah.
It's not Gerald Ford.
It is also, it dates the movie, though. The idea that he was Secret Service in his youth for Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, who is almost 100 years old now.
Oh, true.
Right?
True
so
facts.
it is interesting because, I mean, I have friends who don't know who Jimmy Carter is, and they would just assume that this is a made-up character, right? So it is interesting how dated the movie has become because of that. Anyway, so he takes a few shots as he's shielding the president, and his daughter is, like, looking through the oxygen tent in the hospital, and she's just so very proud of him.
And he must have been wearing a bulletproof vest because he took a lot of shots directly in the chest, but I feel like he took one or two in the shoulder and you see blood.
Yeah,
But I think the chest shots had to have been a vest because otherwise you're dead.
I mean, you take that much impact on your chest. I mean, like, it's going to cause internal bleeding. It's going to do damage at that kind of close range.
Absolutely.
Too, so,
absolutely.
So anyway, he comes to, and a goon named Chet slaps him in the face to wake him up. And Kim Coates played Chet, and another actor that I have seen in a ton of movies.
He was super young in this.
Yeah,
but he's a big part in Sons of Anarchy.
Okay,
and in Open Range and Waterworld he was in.
Wow, okay.
And he was a main like a goon in Bad Boys as well. But yeah, super recognizable. I always love him. I'm a big Kim Coates fan. This scene I feel like is almost like one of the centerpiece scenes of the movie. As scenes I recall from the movie, it's like the bit where he catches Mike in the closet, fucking his wife or whatever. Yeah. And this scene, and those might be the two that stand out the most to me in this whole movie of like scenes I remember.
Well, I mean, they're defining scenes for Joe. Both of those scenes that you're talking about are defining moments for Joe, right? Because they really give you a sense of who this character is, as we're going to discover in a moment here. The place where Joe is it's like when Diddy was still not, like a horrible criminal, when he used to throw his white parties. Like, this room looks like the place where Diddy would throw one of his white parties.
Sure,
like,
it's this all white, like an indoor swimming pool.
Even like the piano is all white. Everything is all white in here. And so we see Chet, and there's another goon, and Milo is sitting on the piano bench, and Chet goes to slap Joe again, and Joe catches his hand out of the air and says he's awake, which is a callback to how quick his reflexes are earlier in the movie, right? So Joe
he drops the dude Chet to his knees or whatever, like
almost
twisting his wrist.
Yeah, exactly. And the other dude is like, it's like, look, Milo says that Joe was dangerous. Like, you guys should have been more careful, right? And he's like, fuck that, fuck you, fuck that. Look at him. This guy's nothing. He's a piece of shit. Famous last words from a goon, if ever I heard them.
It was such a good line reading from my boy. He's like, fuck you, fuck that. Fuck that. Look at him. He's a piece of shit. The guy's nothing. He's a piece of shit. I love that. I love all of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, oh, we're going to relish the moment when this guy dies.
You've only got 10. You've only got 10 lines of dialogue in this movie.
He
you
made
just
it
said
memorable.
All 10 of them. Yeah,
I love it.
So Joe asks for a cigarette, and Chet cheerfully grabs him one. And Joe says, like, look, I need a light. I don't have a light. And so Chet brings out a lighter, and then as Joe goes in to smoke it, he punches Joe in the face, which I think is great. All the goons have a good laugh about this, except Milo, who's sitting stoically. Joe says, oh, man, I dropped my cigarette. Could I have another?
It's kind of like that Animal House show where he's like, thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah. So Joe, again, asks for a light and says, if you touch me again, I'll kill you. And so, of course, the same thing happens. He offers the lighter. Sucker punches Joe. Everybody has a big laugh. But then,
that's a 2. He's like, we're 2 for 2. That's a 2 for 2.
at which point, Joe, out of nowhere, does the classic, strikes him in the face, shoves his nose up into his brain, and he falls down dead.
He did that shit.
Yeah, he did
That shit
it.
that every kid knew about.
Yeah, every kid knew about, and I don't actually think is real.
I feel like this movie might have been the only time I've ever seen it in a movie or
Right.
anything. I feel
mean,
like this movie might have been the thing that like sort of put it in the mainstream.
It's a straight up urban legend.
Did you know that if you hit a guy in the nose, you can push his nose up into his brain and kill him?
Every oh my god, the number of times I heard that as a kid.
Every
on the
kid
schoolyard.
born between like 1980 and 1990 knew this was a thing.
Knew it was a thing. Yeah, without a doubt. There was no speculation.
He's like, did you know? Yeah, but did you know you could do this? No, yeah, I knew it. Everyone knows
Everybody
that.
knows. So the other goon comes over to check on Chet and is like, nope, Chet's dead, man.
Holy shit, Jack's dead.
Milo, of course, at this point, finally walks up to appraise the situation. And he says, look, Joe's lucky to be alive after killing Chet. And Joe speculates that he must need him alive for something. Otherwise, I would already be dead.
Right.
Which is a good assessment.
And I read a little bit in the original script where Milo was like, it probably speaks to what a psychopath Milo is, that he was like tickled by this. He's like, holy shit, like I got a kick out of how awesome it was how you killed him. Like that's awesome, dude. You rock.
That's interesting.
I would have liked that actually.
Yeah,
It was
that
like,
would've
holy
been
shit, nice work.
well
Joe.
done. Yeah, like give
Which
him
you
a
got
round
a
of
little bit of
applause.
that where he's like, you do not disappoint.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I loved it.
So Milo confirms that yes, Joe is right. We do need you for something. Reveals, introduces himself
I
as
like that.
Milo.
He's like, let me introduce you. I'm Milo. He's like, I don't give a
I don't
fuck.
give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck that you're the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
He's like, that's all I need to know. I love that's funny because we've seen this scene a million times.
yeah,
He's like, no,
yeah.
I don't give a fuck who you are. You're the bad guy. That's all I need to know. It doesn't. You got a name? I don't give a shit.
Yep.
I loved that.
So Joe asks if he can get a drink, and a voice calls out asking for 2. Uh-oh, the big bad is showing up. And sure enough, it's Shelly Marcone, the owner of the LA Stallions, and he's got a couple of Dobermans with him.
The
Which-
dogs with it. We'll see him again.
We'll see them again. So Marcone is going for a swim. I think the classic big fat evil guy who takes
Yeah.
off his robe and
Fat cat. Like,
yeah, walking into the pool while he's saying his menacing lines. And Joe peppers him with wisecracks because this movie is all about those. And Marcone instructs Milo to teach Joe some manners. At which point Milo pistol whips him. I mean, Joe is just constantly taking blows to the head.
He's
in this
getting the
movie.
shit kicked out of him.
Yeah. And Joe says, if you do it again, I'll kill you. And Milo does it again. Foreshadowing again. This
Yeah.
movie is like loaded with foreshadowing.
Milo just signed his own death
Yeah,
certificate.
he absolutely did. Because that's number 3, right? Like,
Yeah.
this movie loves the rules of 3. So back at the police station, the police are interviewing Jimmy, and they're as a part of their manhunt looking for Joe. And Jimmy's trying to tell him that there's some sort of a conspiracy going on between Marcone and Baynard. But the lieutenant doesn't buy it, and he tells Jimmy that, look, either way, I need to know where Joe is. So cut over to Sarah, who's like pleading, insisting that there's no way Joe killed the cop. He's not going to do that in front of their house.
Yeah.
And the detective asks Staring to leave the room. Then asks Sarah, like, look, were you having an affair with Mike before he died? And it's like, okay.
I think both these interrogation scenes had the feeling like of being reshoots
Yeah.
because the lighting and the camera angles in the Jimmy interrogation to me seem like designed to obscure the fact that this is not an interrogation room. There, it looked like a hotel room. They were in almost like there's like wainscoting on the wall and stuff. I'm like, this is like weird.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
And
That's
then
amazing.
In the Sarah interrogation, she's wearing like a baseball cap,
Yeah.
which usually is like an indication that she's got drastically different hair now,
Right.
and we're trying to hide that.
That's
or
a really
whatever.
good point. Yeah.
But she's being interrogated by a character we've never seen before
Yeah.
and we'll never see again.
Nope. In it for one scene.
Yeah, I just felt like this felt like reshoots.
Yeah,
to me.
no,
Or like
I agree
we
with you.
axed some stuff out and we got to film a scene to bridge two bits together or some shit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is definitely a reshoot. That makes a lot of sense. So Darian's been kicked out, and while she's walking out, she sees that Jimmy's on a payphone and she's listening in, and he's talking to someone at the Stallion season ticket office asking for Baynard's home address because Baynard's a season ticket holder, and I'm like, I'm not sure that that's how this works.
We got to appreciate the fact there's no way a U.S. senator is giving their home address out for season tickets.
Not a chance in
that gets
hell.
mailed to my office.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's not even probably his office. It's probably his assistant's cubicle, right?
Sure. Yeah.
There's no way you're getting any relevant data out of this call.
Absolutely.
But,
nor is there any reason for Jimmy to think that Joe is at Baynard's house.
Right, exactly. There's just no. It's a complete leap of logic.
Of course, it works out in the end.
It works out in the end,
but there's no reason to think.
No.
You know what? He's probably at the senator's house.
So, anyway, Jimmy gets the address and he jots it down on a page in the phone book and then rips the page out. And he says, tells Darian not to worry because he's gonna find her dad. So, cut back to Marcone's mansion, and he's talking to Joe about the greedy players and how they're killing football, which is a callback to the cop in the cop car and the police, in the police parking garage.
Yeah.
And now
it's kind of laughable to me because I'm like, an owner is complaining about greedy players.
I know.
It's mentioned enough time in the movie. Like, I feel like this must have been Shane Black's opinion.
Yeah.
At the time. But it's like, no one in the world is more greedy than NFL owners.
No, they're literally.
It's like that age-old thing of billionaires trying to convince you that millionaires have too much money. And then millionaires and billionaires are trying to convince poor people that the reason why they're poor is because of other poor people.
Right. Don't get addicted to water.
Yeah. You'll resent its absence. Also, what about the weird shout out of like PCP?
Oh yeah,
guys are doing PCP.
Remember when PCP was a thing that people were afraid
was
of?
Like,
wow.
Is PCP still a drug people do?
I don't think so, because like you die from it too easily.
What? I don't even know what it is. It's like a stimulant, right? It makes you go fucking crazy. It's like bath salts.
Oh
right?
Yeah, that was a thing. Another thing. Yeah. I don't know anything about PCP other than we were supposed to be terrified of it when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, he's complaining about greedy players who are killing football, and players now are getting hooked on drugs, and they're killing themselves on the field. And I'm like, dude, the reason he killed himself on the field is because you're goon. Like,
absolutely.
It's like, this is bullshit, which of course that's what we're supposed to be thinking. So Marcone says the fans are sick and tired of it all, and ratings are dying. And again, we're in an alternate universe where this was actually a thing at some point. So Joe asks if that's why they've been trying to bribe Senator Baynard into legalized gambling. And Marcone says that at this point, legalized gambling is the only thing that can save football. And boom, now we get to the actual crux of the movie.
Right,
like why this whole thing is going on.
Finally.
Yeah.
All the pieces are coming together.
It's because the owners, if they can get gambling legalized for football, it'll save their hides and they can keep making themselves rich. And I think that that's actually a pretty clever sort of whole conspiracy.
Absolutely.
I thought that was super cool. So Marcone says that he bribed every single senator on the Sports Gambling Commission, and Baynard is the only holdout, not because he's got ethics, but because he wants way more money. Otherwise, he's going to tell the police about the scheme.
Right.
So he's basically trying to blackmail or extort Marcone.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, judging from what we've seen in the flashbacks, I wouldn't put it past this douchebag. So,
nice.
So Marcone says that at this point it's easier to just kill Baynard. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that seems reasonable. Yeah. So Joe says that killing the senator is crazy, even for him, and I don't know that I agree with Joe on this one. This seems like the next logical play for Marcone.
Uh-huh.
So Marcone says that, well, look, like that's what we're going to frame you for the murder. And since, everybody knows you already hate him, and I'm like, oh, dude, that makes sense.
That was the bit when we were watching it, we were both like,
right, exactly.
The bad guy's scheme, like, you never see this in movies, but the bad guy's scheme is evolving as the movie plays out.
Yeah.
Because usually the villain has their evil scheme, and it never deviates.
Yeah.
Right through the movie. But this one was like, right. He had the one idea, I'm going to bribe you, but then Corey found out about it and the guy wants too much money and that hasn't worked out. So now he's switched it up and he's like, well, now we'll just kill him and we'll frame you for it. And it's like, the shit actually makes sense.
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, this is like a really like a complex and like all the pieces are fitting together in the plot. This is awesome.
Yeah, I know. It makes perfect sense. So anyway, it was like, yeah, we I think we actually paused and was like, oh,
this is fucking great.
Yeah.
Yes. Joe's going to be their patsy.
Yeah, and it's just like perfectly
it
emergent.
actually makes sense because he's been on his own harassing the senator.
Yeah.
And he has beef with him from years ago or whatever. Yep. Yeah, no, this is great.
It's the villain is pivoting and turning things to his advantage and like making it work for him.
I love it.
Yeah. So back at Boehner's house, he's doing some bullshit interview about sports gambling, the Sports Gambling Commission, and he's reviewing the issue thoroughly before they take a vote, blah, blah. I mean, standard political bullshit. And
again, his face is so
it's
punchable.
Just like such a shit-eating grin, like how anybody could take him
big,
serious.
Like, buck teeth. I don't know if those were actually his teeth or his veneers, or if that was something fake. But he had these just massive, like pearly whites,
just grin of teeth, like just nothing but teeth.
Fucking asshole.
If you saw Miyazaki's latest movie with the pelican with like the giant teeth, it's like that's
awesome.
Anyway. So he says, oh, okay, the interview's done because I've got to go because I'm on my way to the game as we speak.
Right.
So we see that Jimmy is staking out Boehner's house, but he doesn't really know what to do next. At which point...
he's like asking himself, what would Joe do? He'd shoot everybody and smoke a bunch of cigarettes, which is like accurate.
Which is, truth. Yeah.
I love that.
So as he's musing on this, he's startled by Darian, who like pops up from behind with the furry Tom puppet.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Why does a 13-year-old take a puppet everywhere?
I don't know, man.
That's crazy to me.
She is such a weird character throughout this movie, but she has an important role to play.
Absolutely.
So we're stuck with her. So Darian tells Jimmy that she hitchhiked there after figuring out the address that he jotted down.
Right. She did the old Nancy Drew shit where she like took the next page of the phone book and did a little rubbing
pencil,
or whatever.
Yeah, does the rubbing on it.
That's the address. Okay, yeah, sure.
So anyway, she out of nowhere produces a revolver that she got from her dad's closet and says, here, you can have it.
So did she go back home to get a gun and then come over to where he's at?
Oh, the only thing that I can assume is that the answer is yes. Because she talks specifically about hitchhiking to this address.
Unless she took a gun to the police station, which would be crazy.
So this is like how long has Jimmy been sitting in front of this house?
I mean, I guess it could be hours.
And so she hitchhiked to her home, got her dad's gun, and then hitchhiked
I'm gonna go get a gun
from the Pacific Palisades to wherever this mansion was.
Which is up. We don't know where the senator.
We don't know
lives,
where the senator
but
lives.
it's up in the hills somewhere. It seems very like. No, they said Bel Air earlier.
Oh, that's right. It was
I don't know
Bel Air.
what actually Palisades to Bel Air is not that far.
Okay, all right. I don't remember.
It's not that far, but it still takes.
It's a 13-year-old
couple hours to get
this.
from downtown to the Palisades to Bel Air.
Yeah. But also, it's a 13-year-old doing
hitchhiking.
This.
A kid with a puppet and a handgun. Pick her up.
That is some creepy ass shit. Like, so Jimmy sees the gun, freaks out, and grabs it from her, and is like, "Get the hell out of here!" And at that moment is when they see Boehner's goons. They're piling into a car, and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to follow him."
There's actually no plausible reason to think I should follow these guys.
No, none whatsoever. Yeah.
But he does it. It's smart.
Yeah,
it works out.
Smart. Yeah. So Jimmy tells Darian to get out of the car. She refuses, and Jimmy agrees to take her along since I guess you're not that dangerous, which is all right.
His famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words. So now we cut to, we're in the woods somewhere in LA, I guess.
Yeah, right. Where do you think they were? You had opinions about it, like up in not Malibu, maybe like you said Griffith Park.
Yeah, maybe they were up in Griffith Park. That's the only place I could imagine unless they were driving way the fuck out to Big Bear or something.
I love the mountains in California. Yeah, it's a beautiful country, but
given the car chase that comes up, I have to believe that it was Griffith Park.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but there's like a whole army of goons surrounding Milo and Joe and everybody there. Jimmy and Darian, they follow the senator's goons up into the mountains, and lucky for them, they're all meeting together. So
it worked out well for him.
It worked out well. I know. So Jimmy isn't sure what he's supposed to do. But Darian thrusts the revolver at him. It's like, go see what they're up to.
She's waving that shit around with her finger on the trigger.
I mean,
like, that shit was wild
I know,
to me.
but Jimmy doesn't want the gun, so he doesn't take it. And he tells Darian to stay there. And she starts acting like the good daughter.
She's like, no, she starts like panting and like.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time with 13-year-olds, but this chick is a pain in the ass.
No, she is a problem.
I don't know if that's
child.
what teenagers are really like, and maybe it is.
I mean,
like, fucking smart ass kids.
I know a few teenagers and they're smart asses, but they're certainly not as clever as this kid is. So Jimmy gets out of the car and he jogs into the woods. So the senator's bagman, he's now with Milo, and they're counting the $6 million, which is the false bribe, because we talked about.
Right.
He verifies the $6 million, and then all of a sudden Milo pops out and demands that his goons frisk this fuck.
I love that delivery.
Saying that he could be a cop wearing a wire. And I'm like,
has anyone bothered to frisk this fuck? Like, I feel like, dude, if he's a cop, you guys are already fucked.
Already fucked. Like, this is too little, too late, my friend. So while the bagman, his back is turned, they pull the old switcheroo with the briefcase. So now we know it's like, okay, he's not actually worried about this. It was just an excuse to get his back turned.
It was a ruse.
Yeah. So they swip the cases. They take the $6 million out and they put the C4 in. But while all this distraction is going on, Joe takes this, he sizes up the situation and he's watching everything that's going down. Like, he's getting a lay of the land. So Milo tells Joe, who Milo calls Joseph. Again, coming back to the trait of this character is like every single character he calls by their full name as opposed to their colloquial nickname. So he tells Milo to hand the briefcase to the bagman, and Joe does so. And then in the background, we see a photographer take a photo of this, like sort of like intentionally catching this ne'er-do-well bag money exchange.
Sure. I gotta think, like, honestly, if this guy is like the senator's bodyguard, and Joe is a known harasser of the senator, I would feel like the bodyguard would recognize Joe.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen your picture. Like, be on the lookout for this fucker. There's just like all sorts of alarm bells should be going off. Like, I'm not taking any case you're giving me to give to the senator.
Doesn't feel right here.
This is all kinds of off.
So Jimmy arrives at this point, and he's watching off in the distance about what's going on.
Yeah.
And as the senator's goons load up to leave, Joe asks Milo if there's a bomb in the case. Milo says it's 10 pounds of C4. I don't know why he's offering up this information, but whatever.
Why not?
Why not?
Because he's a movie bad guy.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Why.
And that they're going to deliver that to Baynard's house by his own bodyguards. Milo then also tells him that
it seemed a little dangerous to me to, like, you're sending this guy with a bomb to the stadium,
right?
Where also your boss is,
right?
I'm like, and this is a massive bomb. Like, like it's
Well, as we will see later,
it could do massive damage. Like, if nothing else, it like there's a bombing in your boss's football stadium during his team's game.
I mean, the amount of explosives in this case is takes this from hit to domestic terrorism.
Right. Like, I'm not sure that you're anticipating he's going to open the case at the game, but there's every reason to believe he's going to pop that case open in the stadium to take a look at the money. And it's crazy shit.
So Milo tells Joe that after he's dead, the police are going to receive the photographs of Joe handing the bomb to the bagman.
Right.
And then Milo says, like, look, they're going to believe it because they already think that you killed Mike and the other cop, right?
I feel like they've been getting very lucky with the way things played out.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we killed him in front of Joe's house, and now we killed this cop in front of Joe's house. So it sort of looks like Joe's already killed a couple of people.
Yeah.
To try to, and like his mission to kill the senator or whatever. This is
bad luck for Joe.
They've been getting very lucky. Yeah.
So Joe tells Milo to go fuck himself, as he has wont to do these days. Milo gets pissed, threatens Joe with a switchblade.
It's kind of like a non-threatening, like a weapon.
Yeah.
It's like a tiny little switchblade.
I thought that they were going to pull, I had forgotten, by this point, but I thought they were going to pull a Chinatown and like they
slice his nose.
Slice his nose, and then because I mean, like Milo's making all these threats about how much I want to make you hurt.
I'm gonna pop your eyeball out.
And I'm like, okay, all right. So are we gonna do something along the Chinatown lines? And
it's like, I don't know. You could kill somebody with that switchblade, but it's not like it wouldn't be easy to kill somebody. You'd have to stab them a lot.
Yeah.
Or slice their throat or something.
Yeah, I think
it's not just like you stab him and he's dead from that, because that's a tiny little. It's like smaller than a steak knife.
I feel like Milo knows what to do with that blade, though.
That's true. Milo's a pro, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess we can assume it. Also, I feel like people just see guns or knives and they immediately go, "Oh, that's instant death." And so you don't really have to be that.
In movies, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a knife sticks in your chest, you're like, I'm dead instantly. Like a knife, it would take a while for you to die. I think. Even if it punctured your heart, it would take a minute.
Yeah, you wouldn't die right away. Yeah. So Jimmy watches on, and one of Milo's henchmen sneaks up and gets a drop on him. Oops.
Jimmy's not great at this shit.
He's new. He's still new.
He's a novice.
He's a novice. So back at the cars, Milo tells Joe, I want to hear you scream. Right. And Joe says, like, well, then put on some rap music. And you're like, oh, snap. Calling back to the beginning of the movie where he hates that funk junk or whatever.
And that shit about, like, I want to hear you scream was, like, sexual.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you think you're so fucking cool, don't you? And he's like probing him with his blade or whatever. It was just, it was odd. Yeah.
So at this point, the goon walks down with Jimmy, and
that's when he calls Jimmy James.
Yeah, that's right.
He's got to stick with that shit.
That's right.
What is that about? Is that like a power play?
I guess maybe it's a power play, like the refusal of, just like, I'm going to call you by your given name.
Remember when what's his face in all the John Wick flicks called Jonathan?
Jonathan, right? Yeah. Jonathan. I think it also, I mean, at least in John Wick, I think it was just more of I'm a formal kind of old school kind of guy, and it makes me seem more classy. But in this one, I feel like, it's not Winston. Like Milo is like, it's as a power play for him. So Jimmy and Joe bust each other's balls for a little bit, and they talk shit to the bad guys. Milo tells a few of the goons to go, okay, take care of them. Go kill them and bury them. And they start to walk them into the woods, at which point Darian comes strolling in with Furry Tom. Finally, the payoff of Furry Tom. Joe tells him to send the kid away, but Milo says, whoa, hold on.
That actually makes no sense.
No.
It's like, get this kid out of here. And Milo, no, you keep her here.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, but he doesn't seem to know that it's his daughter.
No, I guess he doesn't know.
It's just weird.
But he knows that Joe is left-handed, but he doesn't know that he has a daughter.
He doesn't know what the daughter looks like? Yeah, sure.
So Darian asks Joe, like, hey, do you want to play with Furry Tom? And Joe says no and tells her to beat it, but Darian insists that he takes the puppet.
The young actress was like doing pretty good work there, I thought.
Yeah,
she's like, no, take the puppet.
Yeah. I feel like Joe caught on to it. So he takes the puppet and he starts to do.
You were complaining when we were watching about like these kids in movies being too smart.
Yeah, I know. And they are, though. They totally, I mean, this is literally Shane Black doing his impersonation of a 13-year-old girl.
Sure.
And because she doesn't speak at all like a 13-year-old girl. So he takes a puppet and he actually starts like doing, like he does a roast of all of the villains.
It was actually funny
in the guise of the puppet voice.
He's like, I feel like this is the first pussy any of you guys seen in a long time. And no, it had me laughing. So, the dudes, of course, like earlier in the alley, like he gets all the bad guys laughing.
Oh yeah. So the goons are laughing. At which point he like shoots from, because he's got the gun inside the puppet, which we figured out at this point, right? And he shoots the gun from inside the puppet, kills one of the goons.
Right in the head.
Just like another headshot.
Point blank headshot.
I know. Jimmy punches another goon, kicks another shotgun out of the way, right before he can shoot Joe. And then that gun goes off and hits another goon. I mean, it's a super violent moment. Lots of goons die in this like 2-second scene. So Joe tells Jimmy to take Darian and run. And he shoots off like while they're fleeing. So it's this like violence everywhere.
It was finally we got to see some Jimmy athleticism. Like he scooped Darian up and was running like hella fast.
Yeah. They get back to Jimmy's car and they take off. Joe's driving.
That was a big jump in action, wasn't it? It was like them running to the car's full speed.
Yeah.
Like, because getting in a car and getting the car started takes a minute.
That takes a second.
The bad guys are probably on top of you, gunning you down by then.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of time to sort of buckle in and be safe.
You're right.
So Joe's furious that Darian got involved. Now they're being chased, of course. There's a couple bad guys. It's everywhere. It's shooting. It's a pretty good chase sequence.
It does the thing in movies that gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
Which is on a chase in a dirt road, the car that's out in front of everyone else, when they have the shots of that, you see the dust being turned up by the camera car.
Yeah.
And you're like, that sort of breaks the fourth wall for me. I know, like, in 1991, there was no way around that.
No.
In Ronin, it really bothered me in Ronin.
Oh.
Anyway, that's just me, though.
Yeah.
I think that's unavoidable. At least in the time, that was unavoidable.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it. And for what it's worth, I actually, until you point, now that you pointed out, I'm like, oh yeah,
There shouldn't
right.
be dust flying up in front of the car in front.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Joe passes Jimmy the gun and says, start shooting. At which point, Jimmy's convertible, like the top just completely tears off.
What happened
For no
there?
reason, I guess.
Why
I
did
don't
that
know.
happen?
They just needed it to happen.
It needed to happen.
So Jimmy shoots at the bad guys, but doesn't really hit anything. Joe starts, like, they're reaching to the top of the mountain. There's not really a lot of places left to go.
It was awesome views of the city from up there. So it probably was, like you said, like up around the observatory or something.
Yeah. So Joe spins the car out, and then Milo screams at his driver as they're approaching, push this vile fuck off the road, man.
That was an awesome delivery. Push this vile fuck off the road. Awesome.
So Joe begins to back down the road, and he runs into one of the bad guys' cars, and that car tumbles down off the side of the mountain. Joe then tells Darian and Jimmy to get their seatbelts on.
Yeah.
and this is as Milo's car is pulling up beside them. The cars slam into each other. They both drive off the road. They're rolling down the mountainside. Joe's car crashes through a fence into someone's yard and then crashes into a tree. They'd all be dead.
That's brutal. Even with seatbelts, you think?
Oh my God. The speed at which that car hits the tree, I can't imagine anybody surviving that.
Uh-huh.
The bad guy car, it manages to jump over everything, and it lands hood down into a swimming pool, right?
There was this super quick shot of Milo, which would imply that maybe he was getting ready to bail out.
Yeah.
Which was a clever edit. But yeah, they, like the dude's out there like with his little toy dog or whatever.
Yeah. And so the homeowner's there in his like bathrobe and his little toy poodle or whatever it is, and he's like not happy about the villain's car landing in their pool. So Jimmy, Joe, and Darian, they run over as the car blows up in this pool, and Joe continues to pump bullets into the car to make sure anyone's dead. And I think doesn't Jimmy ask something along the lines of like, you think they're dead, and he shoots more rounds into the car.
Exactly.
And he goes, they are now.
They are now.
So Jimmy tells the homeowner to call the police and tells him there's a bomb on the way to the stadium and that Senator Boehner is in danger.
The homeowner was played by this actor named Rick Duckerman, who was in Die Hard.
Yeah.
He had a big part in The Burbs.
Okay,
but he was in Groundhog Day and Last Action Hero.
Oh, I remember him. It was like
he was one of those two
anywhere, buddy.
The two yokels.
The yokels. Yeah,
and he's been in so many movies. I feel like he must be friends of somebody.
Yeah.
And he keeps getting cast in these
tiny little roles,
which probably pay pretty well, especially like the residuals.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, sure. Why not? Yeah.
But yeah, Rick Duckerman popping up again.
There you go. Nice. So Joe jumps into the pool and grabs the $6 million case from the trunk, and this is the one with the actual money.
Right.
And then he forces the homeowner to hand over the keys to his car.
That was funny.
Yeah. The homeowner refuses, and then Joe puts a gun to Darian's head.
Give me the keys or I shoot the kid.
He's like, well, okay, all right.
All right.
And I'm like,
he had his fucking finger on the trigger.
On the trigger. I'm like, this is your daughter, dude.
Crazy.
But Joe says, like, look, Darian, you stay here with the homeowner. You'll be safe here. And they steal the guy's BMW and head off. Jimmy tells Joe that he's like, you've got to be the dumbest guy in the fucking world. And this is like, you're trying to save the life of the guy that ruined your career and avenge the death of the guy that fucked your wife.
It's a great plot summary.
I know, it is. It's like 100% right. And so they peel out and leave. Meanwhile, the homeowner is on the phone with the police saying, hey, look, Joe stole my car, and that they're heading to the stadium. He starts to lie, but Darian kicks him.
That was kind of weird. He's fucking crazy. He set my house on fire.
Right.
And then it's like, no, he didn't do that
No,
shit.
he didn't do any of that. Like, what are you going to try to parlay this into a rental like fraud? Like, what is this? Doesn't matter, because out of nowhere a gunshot rings out and the homeowner's shot in the head again.
Again,
we're at
another
what,
fucking
7 or
headshot.
8? Like, this is headshot count
It's kind of
is
crazy
really
in this
high.
movie. Yeah. The MPAA has a problem with that. I feel like that's why the edit took so long, and why you don't see that in so many movies is because, like, okay, chest shots we're fine with, headshots we don't love that. Especially like very graphic headshots.
Yeah, and they're all graphic in this movie.
For sure.
So a bruised and bloodied Milo, he walks up, he grabs Darian, and then at the police headquarters, the lieutenant is calling for all available units to get to the stadium. And that's it for part 4.
Hell yeah.
Oof.
We're teed up for the exciting conclusion.
Nothing but action from here on out. There's not a
I feel like that whole section was action that you just told about.
Yeah. I mean, it's been all of Act 3 is just a giant action montage.
Absolutely, man. I love it.
But yeah, so we're wrapped up here. We'll be back next week.
Yeah, for the exciting conclusion. Thanks for checking out the penultimate episode. We love it. And until then,
we'll be back.